I'm Judith Chalmer, and I'm pleased to be reading here with Scudder Parker today. We're each going to read 2 sets. There are many people to thank for this wonderful Poem City opportunity. It's my special pleasure to thank Vermont Humanities for supporting Poem City. It's an organization that's dear to my heart. I'm on the board, and this reading was originally going to take place there. I hope that you will still be able to go there digitally, because there's an abundance of talks and readings and podcasts that you can access from your home. I'd also like to thank Vermont College of Fine Arts, whose program gave me my start as a poet for funding Poem City, as well as National Life Foundation, Hunger Mountain Co-op, the Poetry Society of Vermont. I'd also like to thank you who are listening and watching. In the words of our beloved John Prine, hello in there. I'm going to introduce Scudder Parker. Scudder Parker grew up on a family farm in North Danville, Vermont. He's been a Protestant minister, state senator, utility regulator, candidate for governor, consultant on energy efficiency and renewable energy, and is settling into his ongoing work as a poet. He and his wife Susan live in Middlesex, Vermont. Scudder has published in Sun Magazine, Vermont Life, Northern Woodlands, Passager, Eclectica, Twickenham Notes, Crosswinds, Aquifer, and Sky Island Journal. His first volume of poetry, Safe as Lightning, will be released in May 2020 by Rootstock Publications.
Greetings. I'm Scudder Parker and delighted to be reading with Judith Chalmer. I was looking forward to doing it in person at the Humanities Council, but it's great to do it this way given the conditions that we're in. I want to thank the Kellogg-Hubbard Library for making this a possibility. I want to remember especially and give thanks for the work that Rachel Seneschal did for 10 years to get the whole institutional structure of Poem City up and running. It's a delight, has been a delight to work with her. And Michelle, we're so delighted that you've taken over and are running it in a new and troubled time. Thank you very much. I'm going to introduce Judith Chalmer. We are going to read 2 sets of poems, approximately 8 or 10 minutes each. And after the first round of reading, we're each going to ask the other one craft or art skills question about how we do our writing. Judith Chalmer is a longtime friend. We were part of Acme Poets together in central Vermont. She now lives over in the Burlington area. She's the author of 2 collections of poems. Minnow, published this year by Kelsey Books, is her recent publication. And Out of History's Junk Jar is her other book. She's a co-translator of 2 books of haiku and tanka with Montpelier poet Michiko Oishi. And before retiring in 2017, she was the executive director of VSA Vermont, later renamed Inclusive Arts Vermont, a nonprofit in arts and disability. In 2018, Judith received the Arthur Williams Award from the Vermont Arts Council for meritorious service in the arts. She lives in Burlington with her partner, Lisa. You want to read, Judy?
Thank you, Scudder. I'm going to be reading from Minnow, which was published by Kelsey Books. And you can see on the cover the artwork by Vermont artist Diane Schullenberger. This book, the poems in this book derive their imagery from the natural world, mostly from state and municipal parks. And I'm hoping that this book expresses my gratitude not only for the natural world, but for the people who protect it and care for it. I kind of made that an explicit part of this book and sent it that way to the publisher before I had heard about land recognition, which, as I understand it, is a request by Native American peoples and in our area of Abenaki people to acknowledge that when we gather, we're gathering on land that was not decided to be stewarded in a collaborative or contractual way, but which was just taken illegally and is remains unceded. So in my readings, I want to bring that awareness as well into my acknowledgement. So these poems begin in close observation of nature and they move from there. into questions of love and awe and mortality, etc. purpose. So I'm going to be reading from poems that span those themes, and I apologize for plunging us back into winter and fall. Autumn. This is the first poem in the book, and it's basically a cascade of images. I'm hoping it'll be an invitation to the process of observation. And if there are sorrows, not the duckweed in the dense, sulfurous mud, nor the grumbling party boat motoring to the dock, not the clothesline cinched or the last open flap tucked neatly into the tent, not the dog bed dampish under the table, or the sticky branch piled next to the fire, not the gull raising a baffled wing, loose feather floating over the lake, not the tilted tarp or the bandaged stand of birch, not the rinse bucket or the ragged cloth. None of these will mind them. When the book bag yawns, when the chipmunk dives, when the young loon feeds, when the songbird preens, and the fog starts to break and the web starts to sag, when the acorn drops and the lichen curls, when the beetle shines and the rain jacket drips, would that I too could unknow this longing. The next poem, Muddy Brook, is very different, much denser with more story in it. After the glory, everyone giddy with the color in our cameras, the drones gorgeously skimming forested mountains, soundtracks rounding the river bend, I've come back with my crackers. A week after season's peak, on the other end of a big wind, leaves everywhere but above. They cover the trailside table and both plank seats, cover the heavy grate of the fireplace and the outspread arms of the evergreens, goofy in their costumes, clown red and yellow. The dog jousts with the frayed end of a stick. The ground he jostles strange and excitable, stirred with every step. I've taken a day from work, away from my Finch Gold office with its one high window, where the paper-strewn desk and the hastily framed photos, one of a child's hand swirling paint with an apple blossom onto a paper plate, sunset-colored cloth on the round table, the table a little too big for the room, scissors sticking up out of a cup of pens, sweater draped on the chair, small stains on the rug, are a kind of home, one it's hard to leave at the end of the day, full as it is of hope and newness, people to know and things that are yet to be done. The common room, its tiled tabletop littered often with treats, gathers also the faces of those I admire, to think and make dreams happen. There was a sweetness today as the dog and I circled the pond, crushed leaves whispering with a breath and palate, rich as a summer salad, beet and Valencia orange, even the blueberry staining red, only the ferns like torn herbs, still green, scattered in the wild mix. It's a world turned upside down, roots rising up from the leaves, all fists and elbows. It's a hard thing to work, to be held by a purpose, and then to drop in the wind and retire. At the brook, trumpet curls of the bronze birch float to a still pocket behind a rock. The dog's done with the stick. A bare branch pushes at my back, where we sit on the bank watching a boulder bury its mossy head under a bright maple cover. The dog paws for a while at the muddy bottom, then walks back to shake, prickly with ripened seed. The plate. Along the road, the winter birds are stuck to the trees. It's cold. Chocolate doesn't last an hour on the plate. Something's wrong in the middle. Swallowing is hard. The birds hang round as apples no more than an arm's distance up. Our failing steps disturb nothing but us, not the still brown birds nor the rows of urban compost heaped beneath coverlets of stiff white gulls, nor the hawks who are somewhere in this strip of furrows and trees. We can't go far, for fear of a sudden stitch, a catch of breath. This level of illness is new. We turn to go home. I realize again I'm in love. It happened in a sea of summer freckles. It happened as camembert softens in its skin, impossible to refuse. Fingers full and stuffed with love. Before I knew it, the square and the oval, angled jaw, wondering brow, incalculable thin rays, all residue of smiles, were drilled into my mind, described more distinctly, more convincingly than any text I've ever heard. There are tests for what hurts her, ports and plastic tourniquets. The birds pillow their hearts in stillness. I try not to worry. I try a few foods. Neither a bad joke nor a limerick helps. But alone while she sleeps, the sound loosed from my throat sings, helpless and bare as any beast alive on legs to dance across the glittering night. I am granted a great love. And here's the last poem in this set. Turn the page. This is the last poem in the book, by the way. Now that I'm here, I'm pretty sure I'm not contributing exactly with this. Firewood heaved into the open hatch of the car, a tackle box rummaged with spoons, and an oddity of knives, a neighborly clatter of dishes. None of these, for instance, would answer the question, what do you do? I'm watching the young trees at the edge of the pond. 2 maples and a beech hold their angled pose like dancers without fatigue. Last night, I left the canvas chair under the drip line. This morning, a blue dasher dragonfly lit on the cherry-patterned oilcloth, shoveling a fruit fly into its mouth. Then I moved the fork. Maybe it's all right. Loving as I do the fretwork of the ferns, the folded fists of the newborn berries. Thunder rumbles for hours in the nearby hills. The tent will take hanging at home, its green walls sticking together. I'm resigned to soggy underwear. Is this how I'm meant to show up? What have I done to be kind? What will I do when I'm tired and it seems a great purpose has been lost? The needles under the pines pile up the color of summer hay and honey. There's a tub of towels, a dented pot, and some red plastic plates. Somewhere near and certain not to be found, a hermit thrush plays its bright marimba. And how is it I'm so late tending to this temporary shelter?
Thank you, Judith. That was wonderful, as always. I'm always stunned when I read your poems again at the detail. There's just a richness there that's amazing. I wanted to ask you, I was thinking about a different poem that you didn't read yet, but you have this way of describing, what should we call it, the succulent detail of life. It's just this incredible richness that you perceive and enter. And then you sneak in a line like, what have I done to be kind? That, you know, if you just wrote it, would be probably seem isolated and summary in its form. But how is it that you find the right place to put in something that then echoes the detail that you've just described?
Well, thanks for that question. So I'm really in love with and fascinated by our human capacity to make connections, sometimes surprising connections. And so when I'm writing, what I like to do is enter the poem from several different doorways. So I'll start, you know, making observations out in the natural world, but then I'll come in another door and do, you know, write from a more internal landscape. And then the process is one of experimentation. I write and rewrite and rewrite. I'm hoping if it's, I don't know if I can accomplish it, but one of the things I love about those connections is what I go to poetry for is kind of an enriched sense of consciousness, an enriched sense of being alive and aware. So my hope is that I offer that to readers and listeners as a way to be able to have ripples of surprising reflection and connection in readers' own lives.
Well, it works brilliantly. And I think that description of going into the poem from different directions and your practice of rewriting. I had a friend who said she wasn't writing much poetry, she was just doing rewriting. And I said, oh no, Judith would never allow you to say that. Rewriting is writing. So thank you.
And thank you. And I'm looking forward to your reading right now.
Okay. First poem is called The Poem of the World. The poem of the world reveals itself like a doe's hoof tapping ice till she can drink. Startles like the rust of purple on this fall's forsythia leaves, though it may have used that small voice every year unheard. Blinks like red and blue potatoes dug this morning, drying in the sun, testing their startled, untrained eyes. It's the unexpected tickle, the fit of shared laughter in our urgency of touching that becomes another way of making love. It's an ocean beach of pebbles that suddenly starts singing each stone its own tink, together a glorious, indifferent song. And it's the voice of each bird I've only heard as morning chorus, landing with its own song and bright, perfect body in my brain. It is even, now I begin to see them, the subtraction of birds, taking summer with them, too busy to announce their leaving. The poem of the world wants me to wake in my own body. It is astonished I might let these supple bones grow brittle. It is the sudden thing I trust. And this is a poem called Davey Road, where we live. It got named Davey Road after we moved here. A man in clothes the shape of sleep pushes his battered bicycle, wire baskets, front and back, halfway up the drive and stops. He watches me raking gravel. You live here now? I pause, lean on my rake. I'm trying. We gossip like old neighbors. His family logged pine and maple, a few cows and chickens. Some summers a bear got all the corn. I tell him a bear got ours last summer. The house and barn were down where you have your woodpile now. The house was small and cold as hell. The barn was built better. We go down, explore lilac, sprawling roses, honeysuckle, clumps of double daffodils, stacked granite slabs that held the barn. No sign of the house foundation. 5 generations in this place, and I, 3 years. Twice since then, I've seen him, picking up empties. Once, just his bike, leaning against a tree. And this is a poem called Blessing. You compose a table from all the tables in the house, drape it with old linen till it snakes through living room and dining room like a Chinese dragon. White metal lawn chairs come up from the basement slumber, antiques from the bedroom where a week of clothes lands on the floor. You dig to the back of the drawer for cheap stainless, then the family silver, untie ribbons hugging it in chamois cloth. Wine glasses from pewter to crystal alternate around the table, suggesting a symmetry in their history. You remember the spoons that melted in the fire no one here remembers, and the fourth and missing crystal glass. Guests bring the cold air in, each with their offering of food, laughter and greeting for old friends and strangers they embrace, because you love them all. Voices rise in the living room over wine, crackers, chopped liver, baba ganoush. There's that last minute rush, the comfort of it, this in, this out of oven or refrigerator. It's as you bring your kugel to the table, the absence races through you. The laughter here invites the laughter that is gone. How can we be joyful in the company of loss? Your knees are weak. You lean into your closest friend, pause, slowly start to breathe, and we begin now that the meal is blessed. And one more from my mother. This is called My Mother's Art. Above our sink, 61 tidy quarts of tomato sauce march across a painting titled Parker Products 1943. They parade right through the column labeled pints, slip under orange matting on the right, and seem to continue well beyond our sight. Then 26 quarts of string beans, 25 of applesauce, blueberries from burned over Mount Sunapee, raspberry jam in jars of every size and shape line up like creatures for the ark, awkward with each other, but orderly. Hours of picking, chopping, cooking down, filling containers just below the lip, orange gaskets seal, the lid clamped down half tight, billows of steam in a sweaty summer kitchen by the lake. Time pauses for a year or more in the jars sealed overnight. It's evening. My mother gets her paper, brushes, paint. Her legs are swollen. 17 pints of shell beans and corn. She needs to tally up their beauty. My father is off trying to win the war. I am days away from being born.
Oh, Scudder, I am such an admirer of your poems. They contain so much beauty and compassion and intimacy and this lovely balance of joy and sorrow. I think it's just what we all need now. So thank you for reading them. And I'm interested, over the years, we've talked about our our different processes of writing. What are the points when you're writing that are most pleasurable and generative? And what are points that maybe are more difficult and come slower?
Well, for me, the delight in poetry is really, I think, close to what you described. It's finding my way into the observed picture or story or memory that I'm describing. What I think what you helped me learn to do is not to settle for the first time through. So what I've learned is the delight of rewriting or re-entering the poem. And for me, that's often, because I'm a minister, I was a politician, I learned a lot of conclusions. And poetry is sort of the opposite of that. Poetry is sort of finding the truth, not announcing it. So often the thing that's most productive for me is to chop the end off a poem and then figure out, oh, does it just end here? Or is there something else where I want to go deeper into the experience and describe it? So that's what's exciting, is sort of getting through the first part, the first draft of a poem, and then tearing it apart and finding where the real life in the poem is.
It's delightful. Thank you.
So it's your turn.
Okay. We're going back to camping in one of my favorite state parks, Ground. It starts out simply at a campsite, a companionable ring of rocks, navigably even ground, a bit rocky for bare feet, yellowing birches, maple tops turning, bathing suit dripping on the line. So much bravery depends on love. This morning you rose early for work, sun dazzling the mist, a warm cup lifted between us. Now the day is full here of slowness, Hours after breakfast on foot among ferns, a long time listening, dry leaves dropping into the dishes, a shuffling on the forest floor, the broken bars of the ripples building and rebuilding, sips of coffee, autumn grits in my teeth, a fold-up chair near our fold-up shelter, the dog asleep again in the leaves, checkered tablecloth, red potholder. Once again, I'm afraid. Would I know this gratitude without you? Change. It's a plain spoken story. It's where you're going today. Maybe you're at home in the woods, and often, but even so, you're scared underneath a little. A sharp spike at the top of the pines prods at the winded spaces, paper thin and distinct in the ribs. The leaves of the beech have aged like the backs of your hands. It's nothing, but still, each day requires some concession. The branches have dropped their icy coats, and the path is a litter of small fittings. The dog is nose down at the bole of a tree, icicles clinging to his astonished chin. Someone has left giddy tracks, an ecstatic notation on the frozen surface of the pond. Up the hillside, everything is rounded, elbows and shoulders laid out giant, immobile in the snow. You climb over as best you can, finding here and there forgiveness for timid hesitation. Some of the shorter pines loose their shaggy heads onto yours, while nearby nurse trees bend over the battered saplings. One small cloud, edged in ruby, drifts over the pond, and the rumpled birds rise up to their posts in the torn grace of the evening. Next, I'm going to read you four very short poems that are part of an 11-poem series. They were first published in a science fiction magazine. You can hear them as science fiction or not. It pleased me because I think that science fiction accomplishes a couple of things. It decenters the human experience. It questions our benevolence and welcome. And it felt important to me in this book that is 100% in love with the natural world to kind of have part of it be a kind of questioning of the romanticizing of the natural world. So all of these short poems are about an unidentified it that has various characteristics. The overall sequence is called Mirror. I ran. Like it, I was gone in a matter of seconds. Still, I would have liked to have taken that much space, the huge head lifting. But that was after I went back and stood in its place. It was scary to go forward. I had to walk under it. It wasn't like a crow or any other thing with its own business. I was its business. I thought I had my own and could pursue it, but no. Suddenly on my own road, I was a stranger. I used to visit it, spitting out its cage. I suppose looking back, it was unhappy. But I was young. It was exciting to stand in front of it, waving and jumping. Sometimes a head swims by or rises to the surface. Maybe it doesn't rise, maybe it sinks partially under. The important thing is that you look into its eyes. It doesn't like you exactly, not the way you would wish, but what can you do? You can never really part. Nothing you can do will remove your likeness from its eyes. Two more poems and then I'll be done. Crescent Beach. A few ducks stand outside the shelter as I clear the plates. The dog who barks at every child looks on in silence. I don't know why at this moment I'm afraid. I might feel better if I could change a tire or make something tiny and precious float across a microchip. Haven't I always understood that life will end? Now the dog rolls in something rank. In the wild, this 20-foot wide strip of shale, he leaps up again in a frenzy that chases him the whole length of the Crescent Beach, sprinting over the tinkling stones flaked in deep drifts beneath us. How is it so much is shattered? And how long the wearying of the edges? A mist from this morning's rain lifts slowly from the lake. Yesterday's still gray horizon, today industrious sparkling waves. Now the familiar thumping of the osprey, sharp twinge of a gull, and under the tree line the trill of something full and full of hope. Cream-colored stripes cross rim to rim the smooth shale surfaces, the ones with veins the children call wishing stones. They skip easily, winging away from the hands like something alive, like a never-ending supply of kindness. Let's follow the point. My neighbor's footprints, frozen on yesterday's path, softened today to slush, and even the leash lies slack beside the dog. The beach is bare again, the gulping surf testy in its winter thaw, the sand here and there a sudden soup. Grace and drizzle have left us the place to ourselves. I think I must be late, considering death and purpose, the sky and all that's beyond bearing. The dog races to a lingering gull. The clouds begin to break, apricot at their evening edges, then deepening to pink. It seems a long wait till spring and the possible. You know how it is, each year settling in unfamiliar, uncertain. In a few months, the sun on our arms will shed a layer, put our backs into our paddles. There's always a point, the boat slipping from shore, the air sharp, the lake still too cold for swimming, woods full of moss and fungus, when we're tugged into a bewildered hope, with nothing beneath us but a whisper. Thank you, and Scudder, on to you.
Thank you, Judith. It's wonderful. Nothing beneath us but a whisper. This is called Safe as Lightning, and this is the title poem for my not yet out book that looks like this, with wonderful art by Adelaide Tyrol. And so I wanted to share this. Safe as lightning, long before guilt was invented, this stream managed rocks without it. Never a threat or wheedle, just shifted them when strength was gathered. Changes from every storm were there for my exploration. That's how its small riffles and dark pools became such freedom for me. Neither worms I pierced, nor speckled fish I hooked cried out in accusation. In turn, they claimed me, taught me to fin in place beneath a dark green overhang of rock. Oh, how the heart is taught to bargain, search the hard ground of obedience and its deceptions. I would rather sink my feet in black, loamy banks where a holy beaver pond spills disconcerting welcome through the trees. There is no promise I will be safe if I relinquish. It is a place where for a few years trout fatten and the silt accumulates until some torrent tears the sticks apart and I come exploring next June's fertile mud. Nothing I can promise spares the children. My grandson shudders at colliding arguments of thunder, but will not be denied the lightning. And this is my affection for toads. I find myself talking to them initially as though they were small children, then correct, trying to be respectful, adult to adult. Even then, I am too enthusiastic, as though greeting someone I was certain I must know on Main Street, who stares back, struggling to recognize. About the tiller and its bad behavior, I apologized, though remarkably that relative made it to tall grass with only a small limp. No courtesy, no cleverness or deft protection, only this odd elegance, tripping, rolling over, revealing its creamy underside in August peonies. And this is on yesterday's river paddling down the Winooski. I'm still dazzled by yesterday's river. Sunlight, patient, stroking, sly, elusive water. Eagle soaring downstream, claiming everything. We thought we had a plan, but what did we know? That was the joy of it. Graveled shallows, deep current, tugging kayaks through willowed fronds. The railroad tries to river manage with massive granite rubble, blocks that pretend to be invincible until the full flood tosses them. All my life, I've driven beside this river, crossed it on bridge after crumbling bridge. But there we were, captured, and we knew it. Yesterday's shoes sit here, soaked with time. How the bedrock swam upstream, whale sleek, staring at us with its small quartz eye. And this is gratitude. The peonies and gladiolas are more seductive every fall. I choose slips of peony root with 3 buds full of color that may prosper years from now. I dig shaggy gladiola corms plumped on slender stalks, next year's replacements for the tough, exhausted husks left from the thrust of color trumpets to the sky. Purple, steeped in black, regal crimson, slim white Abyssinian, lavender that cried out to sunset orange, bulblets cling, intent on futures of their own. Beauty's nonchalant kindness accepts the slow learning of my eyes. A few days of October sun, they seem like gratitude, always a surprise. I plant the slips, come in and sort the corms, possessed by past and future blooms. I remember how I dreaded grown-ups who creaked like closing doors. Even now I fear joy might never be allowed back through my window. But gratitude's a different eye that opens, unnerving in its great permissions. In sun, on this cold porch, I'm grateful. Some shy part of me is always here. No wisdom, no plan, full of psalms, no notion who I'm singing to. And then finally, late autumn day. Warm and lazy as June, though the sun will set at 4:15. The promised snow has time to bring its joy by morning. Jays and chickadees flit in for seed from pine and elm. Fruit flies cluster on pears and lime. We sit on the porch, sorting through Christmas ornaments my parents will not touch again. What would each child or grandchild choose to take back to their tree? The wooden cat? Crocheted angel stuffed with cotton? Perhaps the mouse in a walnut shell, something they made in a time of simple gifts. We sit in autumn sun as the storm comes on, and weather, grief, and love proceed unsupervised. Thank you. And I want to thank Michelle again for doing this, and Kellogg-Hubbard Library. It's such a gift to have these institutions in our communities as a kind of bulwark against the change that's going on all around us. So thank you. And Judith, thank you for a chance to read with you.
Thank you, Scudder. Would you like to tell people how they can get your book?
Oh, yes, thank you. Safe as Lightning is going to be published. It's published by Rootstock Press, and it will be out in May. And at this point, all you can do is order and wait. It'll be, and you can go to my website, scudderparker.net, and sign up there or pre-order there. Or you can wait and we'll send out an announcement, and you can get it at your local bookstore.
Thank you, Scudder, and for your beautiful reading. And I will echo you in my thanks to Michelle and the Kellogg-Hubbard Library. If you're interested in getting a copy of Minnow, I'm sorry to say I don't have a website, but you can, any bookstore, any local bookstore that is open can order it for you. The publisher is Kelsay Books, Kelsay. You can order it directly from their website. You can order it on Amazon or Barnes & Noble, and as I say, any local bookstore can order Minnow, Judith Chalmer. Thank you so very much.
I want